National debts and deficits. Go ahead and put your phones upside down, push computers. When the government revenues equal their spending, a balanced budget exists. But in reality, the federal budget is rarely balanced. And it's like that in life. You hardly ever spend exactly as much as you bring in. Even if you're budgeting to spend this much money, it rarely works out that you make it to the exact penny. A budget surplus occurs when annual revenues are higher than spending, and a deficit occurs when spending is higher than revenues. In recent decades, deficits have occurred nearly every year. When the government runs a deficit, it must find a way to pay for the extra expenditures. So when we're spending more than we're bringing in, we have to figure out a way to pay for it. It can either create money or borrow money. Covering deficits by creating money will probably lead to high inflation. If you're saying, oh, we're $10 billion short, let's just print up $10 billion more money and put it into the economy, the value of money is less, right? Because there's more in it, so we would have high inflation. The main way the government deals with deficits is by borrowing money. Government borrows money mainly by selling bonds, such as the United States savings bonds. Remember back with bonds, you buy a $1,000 savings bond. That means you won't touch that $1,000 for say a year, and they'll pay you back the $1,000 and another $30. It's something totally safe that you have your money invested in. You get a little bit of interest, and it gives the government that loan. When the government borrows money, it adds to the national debt. That's the total amount of money the government owns to bondholders. Two problems arise from a national debt. First, it reduces the money available for businesses to borrow and invest because people buy government bonds instead of investing in businesses. Remember when we would put our money in the bank, right? The money doesn't stay in the bank. It goes out to other people in the form of loans. So if people aren't putting their money in the bank and they're buying government bonds instead, there's less money to be loaned out. Okay, that's called the crowding out effect, because the government borrowing the money crowds out or forces out private economic activities. So that money isn't available to be borrowed by a business or a person because the government's borrowing. Second, the government has to pay interest to the bondholders, and money spent paying interest can't be spent elsewhere. So when they borrow the money, right, they're eventually going to have to pay it back, but they have to pay back that extra $30 or that extra however much it is. And that money then that they're using there can't be spent somewhere else. Maybe in purchasing goods and services that could help the economy, right? In the 80s, huge deficits, this was under President Reagan, led Congress to pass laws to cut federal spending. But the Supreme Court found many of these laws unconstitutional. Some people suggested having a constitutional amendment, like this change the Constitution, to require a balanced budget, but opponents realized that having that amendment would prevent the government from dealing with bad economic things that happened real quick, right? Just like a recession when we did the stimulus packages and the government, the demand side economics, government buying all the goods and services to get us out of the recession in 2008 or the depression, they wouldn't have been able to do that. At the end of the 20th century, or 1900, budget surpluses occurred for the first time in 30 years. So instead of paying down the debt, we decided to do another tax cut. And then 9/11 happened. And so we've been paying for wars and that recession in 08 since then. All right, questions? And just one more quick one, and then we'll be done, and you guys can have the rest of the day to work on your vocab and reading guide, since we have 3 quizzes next time.